Clara rushed into Adrian's room, her pulse racing as the boy's weak cries pierced the silence of the house. The sight before her made her freeze. Adrian lay on his bed, his small body drenched in sweat, his face flushed crimson. His little hands clutched the bedsheets, and his chest heaved with shallow, rapid breaths. "Adrian," she whispered, her voice trembling as she hurried to his side. She placed a hand on his forehead and immediately recoiled. He was burning up, his temperature was dangerously high. Clara's mind raced. Mr. Taylor wasn't home. He was away on one of his endless business trips, leaving her as the sole caretaker. She had no way to contact him, and Adrian's condition was worsening by the second. She grabbed the thermometer from the nightstand, fumbling with it as her hands shook. 104 degrees, she murmured in disbelief. Fear gripped her chest. "I have to act fast." She rushed to the bathroom, filling a basin with cold water and grabbing a clean towel. Memories of her brother Lucas's fever surfaced as she worked. How she had desperately tried to save him. How powerless she had felt. This time, she vowed, she wouldn't let history repeat itself. Returning to Adrian, she gently placed the cold compress on his forehead. His body flinched at the touch, a weak whimper escaping his lips. "Stay with me, sweetheart," she said, her voice breaking. "You're going to be okay. Promise." Meanwhile, miles away, Mr. Taylor sat in a luxury airport lounge, staring blankly at his laptop screen. The canceled meeting had been a blow to his meticulously planned schedule, and frustration gnawed at him. His assistant had suggested he head home early, but he'd brushed off the idea. "There's always work to do," he had said. Yet now, as he sat alone, an uneasy feeling crept over him. He checked his phone, scrolling through messages, but there was nothing from Clara. He shrugged it off, convincing himself that no news was good news. By the time his delayed flight finally took off, the unease had grown into a gnawing sense of dread. Back at the house, Clara fought to keep Adrian stable. The fever spiked again, and the boy's trembling intensified. Panic clawed at her, but she forced herself to stay calm. She replaced the compresses, murmuring soft reassurances as she worked. "Come on, Adrian," she said, her voice firm despite her fear. "You're stronger than this." She stayed by his side through the night, her exhaustion mounting with each passing hour. Memories of her brother haunted her, but she pushed them aside, focusing entirely on Adrian. Failure wasn't an option. When Mr. Taylor finally arrived home in the early hours of the morning, the house was eerily quiet. His calls for Adrian went unanswered, and a sense of dread settled over him as he climbed the stairs. Pushing open Adrian's door, he froze at the sight before him. Clara sat beside the bed, her face pale and drawn, holding a damp cloth to Adrian's forehead. The boy's small form looked fragile under the covers, his breathing still shallow but steadier than before. "What happened?" Mr. Taylor demanded, his voice breaking as he rushed to his son's side. "What happened?" Mr. Taylor demanded, his voice trembling as he knelt beside Adrian. His son looked so fragile, his pale skin and shallow breaths tearing at his heart. "Clara, what's going on?" Clara stood, exhausted but composed. "Adrian developed a high fever last night, Mr. Taylor," she explained. "It was bad, dangerously high. I couldn't reach you, so I did everything I could to stabilize him." Mr. Taylor's gaze darted between Adrian and Clara. The weight of her words hit him hard. He had been away, prioritizing business, while Clara had been here fighting to save his son. The realization filled him with guilt and gratitude. What have you done so far?" he asked, his voice softening. "I used cold compresses, monitored his temperature, and kept him hydrated," Clara replied. "The fever broke an hour ago, but he's still weak. I called the family doctor. He'll be here soon." Mr. Taylor's chest tightened. "Thank you, Clara. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "You don't have to," she said simply, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "Adrian is like family to me. I couldn't let anything happen to him." Dr. Reynolds arrived shortly after sunrise, carrying his medical bag and an air of calm authority. He examined Adrian thoroughly, checking his vitals, hydration levels, and overall condition. As the hours dragged on, Clara's exhaustion deepened. She had spent the last 6 hours battling Adrian's fever, replacing compresses, and trying to coax small sips of water past his parched lips. Every time she thought the fever might break, it surged back with a vengeance. The room felt suffocating, the air heavy with the smell of sweat and the faint tang of antiseptic. Clara opened the window slightly, letting in the cool night breeze. She hoped it would help Adrian breathe easier. His small body trembled with each shallow breath, and her fear mounted with every passing moment. Her thoughts turned to Mr. Taylor. She tried calling his phone earlier, but it had gone straight to voicemail. She'd left a message, her voice trembling as she explained Adrian's condition, but there had been no response. She cursed his business trip under her breath. "This isn't something you can fix with a meeting or a deal, Mr. Taylor," she murmured to herself, her tone bitter. "Your son needs you." Adrian whimpered softly, pulling her attention back to him. She knelt by his bedside, brushing a damp strand of hair from his forehead. "I'm here, sweetheart," she whispered. "You're not alone." Miles away, Mr. Taylor sat on the plane, his eyes closed but his mind restless. He had an odd feeling he couldn't shake, a gnawing sense of unease that had been with him since he'd left home. Normally, he thrived on business trips. The negotiations, the power plays, the deals, they gave him purpose. But this trip felt different. His mind kept wandering back to Adrian. He thought about the way his son had clung to him when he'd left, his small hands gripping his father's suit jacket. "Do you have to go, Daddy?" Adrian had asked, his big brown eyes filled with sadness. "I'll be back before you know it, buddy," Mr. Taylor had replied, ruffling Adrian's hair. "Be good for Clara." Adrian had nodded, but there had been something in his expression, something Mr. Taylor couldn't quite place. Now, sitting thousands of feet in the air, he regretted brushing it off. The plane landed, and Mr. Taylor's phone buzzed with missed messages and emails. He glanced through them, his chest tightening when he saw Clara's voicemail. "Mr. Taylor, it's Clara. Adrian's very sick. He has a high fever, and I'm doing everything I can to bring it down. But please call me back as soon as you can." His stomach dropped. Adrian was sick? How sick? Why hadn't he checked his phone earlier? Panic surged through him as he dialed Clara's number, but it went unanswered. "I'm coming home," he muttered, grabbing his suitcase and heading straight for the airport. By the time Mr. Taylor arrived home, it was nearly dawn. The house was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that felt oppressive rather than peaceful. He dropped his suitcase by the door and called out, "Adrian? Clara?" No response. He took the stairs 2 at a time, his heart pounding in his chest. When he reached Adrian's room, he froze. Clara was sitting beside the bed, her head bowed, her hands clutching a damp cloth. Adrian lay motionless under the covers, his small face pale but peaceful. "What happened?" Mr. Taylor demanded, his voice breaking as he stepped into the room. Clara looked up, startled by his sudden arrival. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face etched with exhaustion. "Mr. Taylor," she said softly, standing. "Adrian had a dangerously high fever. It broke about an hour ago, but it was a long night." Mr. Taylor rushed to his son's side, his hands trembling as he touched Adrian's forehead. It was cooler now, the fiery heat replaced by a faint warmth. Relief flooded him, but it was quickly followed by guilt. "Why didn't you call me sooner?" he asked, his voice cracking. "I should have been here." Clara hesitated, her gaze steady but weary. "I tried calling, but I couldn't reach you. I didn't want to wait for an ambulance. I was afraid he wouldn't make it. I did everything I could." Mr. Taylor looked at her, his emotions a tumultuous mix of gratitude and self-reproach. "You saved him," he whispered. "Clara, I don't know how to thank you." Clara shook her head. "There's no need to thank me. Adrian means a lot to me. I couldn't let anything happen to him." After Dr. Reynolds left later that morning, Mr. Taylor found Clara in the kitchen, tidying up the remnants of the night's ordeal. She moved slowly, her exhaustion evident in the way her shoulders slumped. "Clara," he said, his tone softer than usual, Can we talk for a minute? She turned, surprised. Of course, Mr. Taylor. He gestured for her to sit, and they both took seats at the small kitchen table. For a moment he was silent, unsure how to start. You were incredible last night, he finally said. I didn't realize how much you've done for this family. I feel like I don't know enough about you. Clara hesitated, her fingers brushing the edge of the table. There's not much to tell, she said quietly. I grew up in a small village. My parents worked hard, but we didn't have much. My younger brother, Lucas, was everything to me. Her voice faltered, and Mr. Taylor leaned forward. What happened to him? He asked gently. Clara's eyes glistened with unshed tears. He got sick when he was 7. We didn't have a doctor nearby, and by the time we reached help, it was too late. I tried to save him, but couldn't. The pain in her voice was palpable, and Mr. Taylor felt a pang of regret for never asking about her life before. I'm so sorry, Clara, he said. I can't imagine how hard that must have been. She nodded, her gaze distant. That's why I couldn't let anything happen to Adrian. When I saw him like that, it brought everything back. I couldn't lose him too. The next few days were a delicate balancing act for Clara and Mr. Taylor. Adrian's fever had broken, but he was still weak, his small body recovering from the battle it had fought. Clara stayed by his side every waking moment, her attention unwavering. She brought him small bowls of soup, gently coaxing him to eat, and ensured he drank enough water to stay hydrated. Mr. Taylor, uncharacteristically, took time off work. He couldn't bring himself to leave Adrian again, not after what had happened. He sat by his son's bed, reading him stories or simply holding his hand as Adrian drifted in and out of sleep. One evening, as the sun cast a warm glow across the room, Adrian stirred. His eyes fluttered open, and he looked up at his father and Clara with a weak but grateful smile. Thank you for taking care of me, he said softly. Clara leaned forward, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. You're welcome, sweetheart. You're such a brave boy. Mr. Taylor's throat tightened as he watched the interaction. How are you feeling, buddy? He asked. Better, Adrian replied, his voice still faint. But I don't want you to leave again, Dad. The words hit Mr. Taylor like a freight train. He took a deep breath, guilt and resolve intertwining in his chest. I'm not going anywhere, he promised. Not anymore. As Adrian recovered, he grew even closer to Clara. The bond between them deepened in ways Mr. Taylor hadn't noticed before. Adrian would light up whenever Clara entered the room, and he clung to her warmth and gentle presence. One afternoon, while Clara helped Adrian piece together a puzzle, he asked, Clara, do you have kids? The question caught her off guard, and for a moment, she didn't know how to respond. No, sweetheart, I don't, she said finally, her voice soft. Why not? Adrian asked innocently. Clara hesitated, her heart aching with the weight of memories. It just didn't happen, she said gently. But I think of you as very special to me. You're like family. Adrian beamed, his little hands reaching for hers. I think you're family too. Late one night, after Adrian had fallen asleep, Mr. Taylor found himself in the living room, staring at an old photo of him and his late wife holding Adrian as a baby. The house had been filled with love and laughter back then. But after his wife's passing, he had thrown himself into work, convincing himself that providing financially was the best way to honor her memory. He hadn't realized how much he'd neglected the emotional needs of his son, or his own. As he gazed at the photo, his mind wandered to Clara. She had stepped into their lives quietly, unassumingly, but her impact had been profound. She had filled a void he hadn't even recognized, providing Adrian with the love and care he desperately needed. Mr. Taylor resolved to change. His son's close call had been a wake-up call he couldn't ignore. He would become the father Adrian deserved. Over dinner one evening, Clara opened up further about her past. It had taken a little coaxing from Mr. Taylor, but she finally shared the full story of her childhood. I grew up in a small, close-knit village, she began, her voice tinged with nostalgia. We didn't have much, but we had each other. My brother Lucas and I were inseparable. He was my best friend, Her expression darkened as she continued. When Lucas got sick, I did everything I could to take care of him. My parents were frantic, but we didn't have access to a doctor. By the time we got him help, it was too late. Clara's voice broke, and she looked down at her hands. I felt like I failed him. That's why, when I saw Adrian so sick, I couldn't let it happen again. I couldn't lose him too. Mr. Taylor reached across the table, placing a hand on hers. You didn't fail Lucas, Clara. And you didn't just save Adrian, you saved me too. I'll never forget what you did for us. A week after Adrian had fully recovered, Mr. Taylor called Clara into the living room. Adrian was seated beside him, holding a small, beautifully wrapped box. What's this? Clara asked, her eyes wide with surprise. It's a thank you, Mr. Taylor said. From both of us. Adrian grinned and handed her the box. Open it, Clara. Inside was a delicate gold locket. When Clara opened it, she found a photo of Adrian on one side and an inscription on the other. To Clara, with love, for being our angel. Clara's breath hitched, and tears welled in her eyes. I don't know what to say, she whispered. You don't have to say anything, Mr. Taylor said. You're more than just an employee to us, Clara. Your family. Adrian leaned into her side, wrapping his small arms around her. We love you, Clara, he said simply. Clara hugged him tightly, her tears spilling over. I love you too, Adrian. The events of that fateful night became a turning point for the family. Mr. Taylor began spending more time at home, prioritizing his son over his work. He learned to cook Adrian's favorite meals, helped him with homework, and even joined him and Clara for movie nights. As for Clara, her role in their lives transformed. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was a cherished part of the family, someone they depended on and valued deeply. Years later, as Adrian grew older, he often looked back on that night as a defining moment. It was the night his family truly came together, bound by love, gratitude, and the selfless care of one extraordinary woman. And though life moved forward, none of them ever forgot the night that changed everything.
The laughter hit me before the words even sank in. The smell of grilled ribs and smoky charcoal filled the backyard, but it couldn't mask the sting of humiliation. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city. You're watching our videos? And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us. What would you do in this situation? Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. Gerald Carter, my father, raised his beer bottle like a toast, his voice sharp and booming so everyone heard. Everyone here is a success except you, he said, eyes locked on me. My daughter, the disappointment of this family. Chairs creaked as relatives leaned forward, eager for the show. My cousin Amanda snorted into her cup, covering her, mouth like it would hide the smirk. Uncle Franklin shook his head with mock pity. And my sister Madison? She laughed the loudest, her diamond bracelet glinting under the patio lights as she clapped her hands like she'd just heard the best joke of the night. Even my brother Lucas, who usually stayed quiet, muttered, "He's not wrong." The table roared. Every chuckle scraped against my skin, every smile carved deeper into my chest. I gripped my paper plate so hard it bent in my hand. Ethan, my husband, sat stiff beside me, his jaw clenched, one hand brushing against mine under the table. His silent message was clear. Don't let them see you break. Dad wasn't finished. Look around, Haley. He gestured toward the long tables lined with relatives. Amanda just got promoted to regional manager. Lucas built his own business. Madison's married into money. And you? What do you have to show us? My pulse pounded in my ears. I stood, my chair scraping harshly against the concrete. The laughter paused for just a moment, long enough for silence to fall heavy across the yard. I steadied my voice, though my throat burned. Thank you, Dad, I said. Thank you for reminding me exactly where I stand. Gerald leaned back, satisfied. That's all you've got? No fight? No defense? Figures. My untouched food slid off the plate and hit the grass as I set it down. My hands trembled, not from weakness, but from the weight of a decision forming inside me. Ethan rose beside me, his presence steady, unshaken. We're leaving, he said firmly, his eyes darting across the family with disgust. Whispers broke out instantly. There she goes again, running away. She can't handle the truth. Pathetic. I didn't turn back. Not once. But something in me had changed. As we walked through the gate, Ethan leaned close, his voice low, steady, promising. Tomorrow, Haley, they'll see who the real disappointment is. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of shame, because of anticipation. The weight in my chest was no longer humiliation. It was fire. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, the gate they mocked me through would be the gate I'd return to. But not the way they expected. Morning light streamed through the blinds, sharp and unrelenting. I hadn't closed my eyes once. Every laugh, every smirk from the night, before replayed in my head like a cruel movie. But now, instead of shame, I felt only clarity. Ethan walked into the kitchen, already dressed in his pressed shirt and jacket. He set his car keys on the counter and leaned against it, watching me as I sipped my coffee. You're quiet, he said, voice low but certain. But I know that look. What's the plan, Haley? I set the cup down, my hand steady. We're not staying here, Ethan. Not another night in this house, not another moment under their roof. I'm done being their target. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Finally. We had been saving in silence for years, working longer, hours, making sacrifices, planning. Every insult, every dismissive glance from my family only fueled me to move forward. What they didn't know was that Ethan and I had already signed papers for a townhouse across town. The keys were tucked safely in my purse. By 9. Boxes were being carried out to the truck. The sound of packing tape ripping across cardboard echoed like a war drum. Each seal felt final, irreversible. You sure you don't want to tell them? Ethan asked as he lifted another box. I shook my head. They'll see soon enough. The drive to the new place was quiet, but not heavy. It was the kind of silence filled with momentum, the rush before a storm breaks. Our townhouse was simple, but ours. White siding, a front porch, a driveway that caught the morning sun. I unlocked the door, and as it swung open, the air smelled like fresh paint and freedom. I stepped inside barefoot, the hardwood cool under my feet. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged somewhere. No eyes judging me, no voices tearing me apart. Just Ethan and me, finally in control. But Ethan wasn't satisfied with just moving. He wanted more. Haley, he said, standing in the empty living room, his voice echoing. We could have told them last night, could have rubbed it in their faces, but you didn't. You wanted them to think they won. I looked at him, confused. And? And now we make sure when they see us again, they don't just regret what they said, they choke on it. I stared at him, the words sinking in. He was right. Walking away wasn't enough. My father, my sister, my brother, they thrived on putting me beneath them. They needed to be stunned into silence, forced to see me for who I really was, not who they decided I should be. We unpacked nothing. Instead, Ethan grabbed his jacket and tossed me mine. Come on, he said. We've got one more stop to make. By noon, we pulled back into the long gravel driveway of my parents' house. The same folding tables from the barbecue were still out, stacked with dirty plates and empty bottles. Laughter still carried from the backyard, like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I stepped out of the car, the sound of the door slamming turning heads instantly. Madison was the first to notice, her face twisting into a sneer. Well, look who decided to crawl back. Dad's voice followed, mocking, confident. Haley. Didn't expect you'd be brave enough to show your face this soon. What's wrong? Can't stay away from success. The others chuckled, ready for another round of jokes. But then Ethan walked around the car and dangled the new house, keys between his fingers. The metal glinted in the sunlight, sharp and undeniable. My voice cut through the laughter. I came back to say goodbye. Not just to this house, but to the way you've treated me my whole life. The backyard fell, silent. My father's smirk faltered, just slightly, but enough for me to see the crack. Ethan slipped his arm around my waist, his tone calm but lethal. We're done living under this roof. We're done letting you treat Haley like she's nothing. We moved into our own place this morning, and from now on, you don't get a say in her life. The words struck like lightning. Amanda's cup slipped from her hand, spilling onto the grass. Lucas blinked, his mouth opening but no sound coming out. Even Madison's smug grin froze in place, her hand tightening on the back of her chair. And my father, Gerald Carter, looked at me like he'd just seen a ghost he couldn't fight. You're lying, he said finally, his voice low, almost desperate. I pulled the keys from Ethan's hand and tossed them onto the table. They landed with a sharp clang. Drive by 14th Street if you think I'm lying. The house with the white porch? That's mine. That's ours. And you'll never take that away from me. Ethan took my hand, pulling me gently toward the car. My heart thundered, but my voice was steady, firm, unshakable. Last night you called me a disappointment. Today, you're watching me walk away free. Remember that. The silence that followed was deafening. No laughter, no mocking, just the sound of their pride collapsing in on itself. We got back into the car, and as Ethan drove us down the gravel driveway, I looked back one last time. They stood at the gate. My father, my siblings, my cousins, all of them speechless. For once, I wasn't the one walking away in shame. This time, they were. The silence from the gate replayed in my mind all night. For the first time in years, I wasn't the butt of their jokes. I was the storm they never saw coming. The next morning, Ethan and I sat on our new porch, coffee in hand, watching the quiet street hum awake. The air smelled of dew and promise. He glanced at me, smirking. You know they won't let this go, right? I sipped slowly, my chest rising with calm determination. Good. Let them choke on it. For once, it's their turn to explain me, not mine. It didn't take long. By noon, Madison's number flashed across my phone. Ethan raised a brow. Answer it, he said. Let's hear the damage. I pressed speaker. Madison's voice burst through, sharp and frantic. Haley, what was yesterday? Some kind of joke? You really think moving into a small townhouse makes you a success? Everyone's still laughing at you. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. If they're still laughing, Madison, why did you call me first thing in the morning? Her silence said more than her words ever could. I ended the call. By afternoon, another surprise came. My father's truck pulled up outside our new place, gravel crunching beneath his tires. Ethan tensed, but I stood. Let me handle him. Gerald. Carter climbed out, his face set in a scowl. He looked around at the porch, the painted shutters, the flowers I had planted in neat rows. He hated it, not because it was small, but because it was mine. You think you've proven something? He barked. You think buying a house makes you better than the rest of us? You'll regret this. Don't come running back when you fail. I walked down the steps, stopping just a foot from him. My voice was steady, sharper than I thought possible. No, Dad. I'm not proving anything to you. I'm proving it to myself. And that's the difference. You live for other people's applause. I don't need it anymore. His jaw twitched. He wanted to speak, but no words came. For the first time, Gerald Carter had no weapon to throw at me. Ethan stepped forward, his presence firm. You should go, he said coldly. This isn't your house. Not anymore. Dad's eyes flicked between us, and for a second I saw it. The panic of a man losing control. He turned back toward his truck, muttering under his breath, but I caught it anyway. "She'll never last." The engine roared, and just like that, he was gone. I stood frozen on the driveway, the cool air brushing my skin. Ethan slipped his hand into mine. "You stood your ground," he said softly. "That's bigger than any house." I nodded, but deep inside, I knew this was just the start. My family would keep trying to pull me back down, to remind me of the role they'd written for me. But the role was gone. That night. As I unpacked boxes in our bedroom, Ethan pulled me close, his voice low and certain. "They'll test you again. They'll throw every insult, every trick they've got. But you're not the same Haley anymore." I looked at him, tears stinging but not falling. "No," I whispered. "I'm not." And they're about to learn that the hard way. For the first time, I wasn't bracing for their cruelty. I was ready for it. Because now, I had something they could never take from me, my own life. Asterisk. The following weekend, another family gathering took place. This time at Madison's polished home with her pristine lawn and oversized driveway. Invitations had gone out to everyone, except me. I wasn't surprised. But Ethan looked up from his phone, a smile playing at his lips. "Guess who just sent out pictures of their perfect family brunch?" he said, turning the screen to me. There they were, Madison, Lucas, Amanda, my father, posing like a magazine cover, all smiles, all pride. The caption read, "Carter. Family, where success runs deep." The sting was sharp, but instead of breaking me, it lit fire in my veins. "Let's go," I said. Ethan tilted his head. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "They think cutting me out keeps me small. Let's show them the truth." By noon, our car rolled up their driveway. Heads turned immediately. Conversations stopped. My sister nearly dropped her glass of champagne. "What are you doing here?" Madison demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut. I stepped out calmly, Ethan by my side, our car gleaming behind us. I didn't need an invitation to claim my place in the family. Dad stormed over, his voice low but venomous. "You don't belong here, Haley. Leave before you embarrass yourself again." But I didn't flinch. Instead, I pulled out a small folder from my bag and laid it on the patio table. Curious faces leaned closer. "These," I said evenly, "are the papers for my new home. Paid, signed, ours. Ethan and I built a life without any of you. And guess what? We didn't need your help, your approval, or your permission." The air went silent. Amanda's fake smile faltered. Lucas shifted uncomfortably. Madison's hand trembled against her wine glass. Ethan added quietly, his tone razor sharp. "You should see it. Bigger than this house, built on our own hard work, not Daddy's handouts." Madison's jaw dropped. My father's face reddened. He opened his mouth, ready to spit fire, but I cut him off. "Last week you all laughed at me. You called me a failure, a disappointment. But today, you can't even look me in the eye without choking on your pride. That's the difference between you and me. I don't need to tear anyone down to feel tall." The silence pressed heavier than words. Their pride was cracking, splintering in real time. I turned to leave, but paused at the gate. "Enjoy your brunch," I said softly. "You'll need it, because the next time people ask about me, you'll have to admit the truth. I didn't fail. I walked away from you, and I'm better for it." Ethan and I walked back to the car, every eye glued to us. For the first time, I wasn't invisible, I wasn't weak, I was the one in control. As the engine roared to life, I glanced in the rearview mirror. My family stood frozen on the patio, stunned into silence, exactly where I had once been, but not anymore. This time, I was the one driving away. and they were the ones left standing in shame.
"Stop pretending you can afford this," Dad said sharply, his voice slicing through the polished air of the luxury apartment lobby. Every head in the marble hall turned toward us: realtor, tenants, even the concierge behind the desk. My father's words carried the same humiliation they always had, dressed neatly in arrogance and disappointment. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos? And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. "Dad," I began, but my sister Megan cut me off with a laugh that was just loud enough to sting. "Oh please, Avery," she scoffed, tugging her designer bag higher on her shoulder. "You can't even pay your own phone bill. Why are we wasting this poor man's time?" The realtor, a man in his late 20s, polite smile fading, looked between us, unsure whether to step in or stay silent. His hands fidgeted with the clipboard like he wanted to vanish. I stood there, forcing myself to breathe evenly. Every insult, every time they told me I'd never amount to anything, every sneer when I said I was building something, it all came crashing back in seconds. But not this time. "Actually," I said calmly, "I can afford it." Dad gave a dry chuckle. "Oh really? With what, your tips? Don't embarrass yourself, Avery. Some people know their place in life, and you should too." The words hit like glass, sharp, cold, but I didn't flinch. I looked him dead in the eye and smiled. "Funny thing, Dad. I stopped believing in places a long time ago." Megan rolled her eyes. "Oh, here we go. The motivational speech. Are we done? I have dinner plans, with people who can actually pay their rent." The realtor cleared his throat nervously. Ma'am," he said carefully, turning toward me. "Would you like me to show them your penthouse first or your second property down the street?" For a moment, no one moved. My father's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Megan froze, her smirk sliding right off her face. The echo of the words, "your penthouse, your second property," hung heavy in the air. I turned toward the realtor, my voice steady. "The penthouse," I said softly. "It's more private." As the words left my mouth, the look on my family's faces was something I'd waited years for, not out of spite, but survival. For once, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the disappointment. I felt seen. Dad's jaw tightened. "You're joking," he muttered. "You're lying to make us look bad again." I met his glare. "No, Dad. You did that all on your own." The elevator chimed. The polished gold doors opened, and I stepped inside first. My reflection stared back at me in the mirrored walls, a woman who had finally stopped apologizing for existing. "Coming?" I asked, keeping my voice light. Megan hesitated. Dad looked like he wanted to speak, but couldn't find the right insult to hide behind. They followed in silence. As the door slid shut, the faint reflection of their shocked faces disappeared behind me. For the first time in my life, I was the one walking ahead, not away from them, but beyond them. The elevator opened with a soft chime, and sunlight poured in like a spotlight. The penthouse stretched before us, wide, open, and breathtaking. Walls of glass revealed the skyline in golden afternoon light, the city sprawling endlessly below like a painting. Megan froze first, her phone slipping slightly in her manicured hand. "Wait, this is yours," she stammered. I smiled faintly. "Yes, I bought it last year." Dad walked in slowly, his polished shoes clicking against marble floors imported from Italy. His expression twisted between disbelief and anger, the kind a man wears when the world stops obeying his rules. He turned sharply to me. "How? You didn't even finish college. You quit your job. You." "I started my own company," I interrupted, my voice steady. "It wasn't easy, but I did it without loans, without handouts, and without your help." He scoffed, shaking his head. "Impossible. You were always the irresponsible one. Always chasing dreams that don't pay." "Not everything I built was for your approval," I said quietly. The realtor, still standing by the door, cleared his throat politely. If you'll notice, sir, this penthouse includes a private elevator, rooftop garden, and skyline view. Miss Porter also owns the adjoining suite, currently under renovation for her design studio. Megan blinked. You have a studio too? I nodded.
2, actually.
One here, one in LA. Her mouth parted slightly, disbelief flooding her expression. You moved to LA? I looked around the room, running my hand along the smooth counter. I didn't move. I expanded. Dad let out a low laugh, bitter, forced. All this, just to prove something to us. No, I said. To prove something to myself. He said nothing, but his eyes flickered with a pride he didn't want to admit. Megan tried to cover her shock with sarcasm. So, what, you're rich now? You think money changes who you are? I turned toward her, meeting her glare with calm precision. Money doesn't change who I am. It just changes how you see me. The silence that followed was heavy. The kind that forces people to see themselves clearly for the first time. The realtor smiled nervously, sensing the tension. Would you like to see the balcony, ma'am? It's one of the most exclusive views in the city. I nodded. Yes, please. He opened the sliding doors and the wind swept in, clean, crisp, carrying the scent of freedom I'd spent years chasing. The view stretched forever. Glittering lights, silver towers, the heartbeat of the city that had once ignored me. Megan stepped out beside me, whispering under her breath. I honestly thought you'd end up living with Dad forever. I looked at her. No anger this time. Just truth. So did he. Dad's reflection appeared behind us in the glass. His voice, low and uncertain, finally broke the silence. Avery, I didn't know you were doing all this. I know, I said softly. You never ask. For a moment, he looked smaller, like the man who once told me bedtime stories before ambition hardened his heart. I took one last look at the skyline before turning back inside. I think we're done here, I said to the realtor. He nodded. Of course, Miss Porter. I'll send over the renewal forms to your assistant this evening. Megan blinked again. Assistant. I smiled faintly. Yes, her name's Claire. She runs the schedule I used to dream of having. Dad said nothing more as we left. His silence followed me into the elevator, thick with realization. And as the doors closed again, I caught my reflection one last time, stronger, calmer, and completely free from needing their approval. This time, I wasn't the daughter who failed. I was the woman who built everything they said she couldn't. The city outside shimmered with lights, but inside my penthouse, everything felt strangely still. The echo of their disbelief lingered in the air like smoke after a fire. I stood barefoot on the balcony, the cool wind brushing against my hair, a glass of water in my hand instead of the champagne people expected from successful women. Success never tasted like victory to me. It tasted like exhaustion and silence. Behind me, I heard soft footsteps. My father had stayed. Megan had already left, muttering something about needing fresh air, though everyone knew she just couldn't bear sitting in a room where she wasn't the center anymore. Dad's reflection appeared faintly in the glass door. Older now, shoulders slouched, his voice no longer booming. You really did all this yourself? He asked quietly. I turned slowly.
Yes.
Every contract, every risk, every late night when I couldn't afford dinner but refused to quit. He rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my eyes. I thought you'd fall apart without help. I didn't think that I'd survive. I said, my voice sharp but calm, that I'd make it without your approval. His lips parted, but the words didn't come. For the first time in years, he didn't sound like a man in control. He sounded human. I set my glass down on the counter. Do you remember the day you told me I'd never make it on my own? He frowned, thinking. Avery. I do. I cut in. You said I'd come crawling back. That the world doesn't reward dreamers. You told everyone at dinner that Megan was the real success of the family. He lowered his gaze. That was years ago. Yes, I said, stepping closer. But words don't have an expiration date, Dad. They stay with people, especially when they come from someone they once looked up to. The silence between us was painful. Not angry anymore, just filled with things that should have been said years ago. He finally looked up at me. I was hard on you, because I didn't want to see you fail. No, I said softly. You were hard on me because you couldn't imagine me succeeding. That hit him. His jaw tensed, eyes glassy under the dim light. He took a slow breath. You're right, he admitted. I didn't see it then. I was wrong. The words felt foreign coming from him. For a moment, I almost didn't believe I'd heard them right. I'm proud of you, he added quietly. I just didn't know how to say it without feeling small. I stared at him for a moment, then walked toward the balcony doors again. The city lights reflected in my eyes like distant memories. It's okay, I said.
You don't need to say it.
I didn't do this to make you proud. I did it to stop being broken. He nodded slowly, his voice hoarse. You sound like your mother. That made me pause. She'd passed years ago, long before I ever found my footing. I wish she could have seen this, I whispered. She would have loved it, he said. And she would have told me to stop being an idiot. That made me laugh, quietly, through the lump in my throat. He smiled faintly, like a man realizing too late that pride had cost him love. As he turned to leave, he stopped at the elevator and looked back. You built something amazing, Avery. Don't let anyone, especially me, make you feel small again. When the doors closed, I was alone once more, standing in the soft hum of the city. I walked to the balcony railing, breathing in the cold night air. Somewhere far below, car horns blended into the hum of life, reminding me how far I'd come from the girl who once counted pennies at a diner. For the first time, I didn't feel angry. I felt healed. The revenge wasn't about humiliation.
It was about peace.
And tonight, I finally had it. Morning light crept through the glass walls, brushing across the penthouse in soft gold. I hadn't slept. Not because of restlessness, but because peace, after years of struggle, felt almost too quiet. I made coffee the same way I used to when I lived in that rundown studio apartment. Cheap beans, no sugar, just habit. Except now, the view was different. Back then, it was peeling paint and noisy neighbors. Now it was the skyline. A view people paid millions for. My phone buzzed on the counter. Megan's name flashed across the screen. For a moment, I hesitated. But curiosity won. Can we talk? The message read. An hour later, she showed up, no makeup, no staged confidence, no laughter at my expense. Just Megan, standing at my door like a stranger who wasn't sure she was welcome. I opened it. You came early. I didn't sleep either, she murmured. Can I come in? I nodded and stepped aside. She entered slowly, eyes scanning the place like she still couldn't believe it was real. It's beautiful, she whispered. Everything about it, it's so you. Thanks, I said simply, pouring her a cup of coffee. She took it with shaky hands. Avery, I owe you an apology. I leaned against the counter, studying her. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. Her voice cracked. I was awful to you. I laughed when Dad mocked you. I ignored your calls when you needed someone to believe in you. I thought you were lost. I said nothing. I'd imagined this conversation 100 times, every version ending with anger, revenge, or a perfectly timed comeback. But now, looking at her tear-streaked face, I didn't want any of that. I was jealous, she admitted, lowering her head. You had courage. You failed, yes, but you kept going.
And I
never did. I just played it safe, trying to keep Dad happy. Her confession hung heavy between us. For a moment, I saw us, as we used to be, two girls sitting cross-legged on the bedroom floor, dreaming about growing up. Before life turned competition into a battlefield. Megan, I said softly, I didn't build all this to prove you wrong. She looked up. Then why did you? I smiled faintly. To prove I wasn't what you all said I was. Her lip trembled. And now that you have it, what do you feel? I glanced at the skyline. Free. Silence stretched between us, comfortable this time. The kind of silence that healed, not hurt. She finally nodded. You're stronger than any of us ever gave you credit for. I chuckled lightly. Took you long enough to notice. We both laughed, a small, genuine sound that felt like the first piece of our childhood finding its way back. Then Megan's tone shifted, serious again. Dad told me he's selling the old house. Said it feels empty now. I swallowed. Maybe it's time. She looked down at her cup. He regrets everything, Avery. He told me he wishes he could take it all back. I turned away, blinking against the sudden sting in my eyes. Regret doesn't rewrite history. No, she said gently. But maybe it starts a new one. Her words landed deep. I walked to the balcony. The same spot I'd stood on last night, the same wind wrapping around me. Do you know what the hardest part was, Megan? I asked quietly. She shook her head. It wasn't the nights I went hungry.
It wasn't the people who doubted me.
It was realizing that my own family, people I loved, saw me as a joke. That broke me in ways success can't fully fix. Megan's eyes glistened. I know, she whispered, and I'll spend every day trying to make it right. Something inside me softened. I reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. Then, that's enough. We stood there for a while. Two sisters, once divided by pride and pain, now bound again by something real. The elevator chimed softly in the background. Dad stepped out. He looked older in the daylight, tired but humble. No arrogance, no sarcasm. Just quiet remorse. I wasn't sure if I'd be welcome, he said carefully. I turned toward him. You're always welcome, Dad. You just have to come with respect this time. He nodded slowly, his eyes glistening. I deserve that. He looked around the penthouse, his voice low. You did what I couldn't. You made something from nothing. I'm proud of you, Avery. It was simple, but it hit harder than I expected. For a moment, I just stared at him. Years of hurt clashed with the warmth in his tone. Finally, I said, I didn't need to hear that, but it still means everything. He smiled faintly. I'm glad. We sat together for a few minutes, the three of us, drinking coffee in silence. Not as rivals or strangers, but as people who finally understood each other. When they left later that morning, the elevator doors closed softly, and I stood alone again in my glass palace. But this time, I didn't feel alone. I walked to the balcony, sunlight kissing my face. The city buzzed below, full of dreams, mistakes, and second chances. I took a deep breath. Years ago, I was the girl who begged for validation. Today, I was the woman who built her own worth. And as the wind swept through my hair, one thought settled in like quiet thunder. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't proving them wrong, it's proving yourself right.
The clink of silverware on porcelain was the only sound at the dinner table, until my mother's voice sliced through it like a blade. This trip isn't for someone like you, Emily, she said, without even looking at me. Her tone was calm, but the words carried that cold sting she'd perfected over the years. Just stay home. You wouldn't fit in. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us, what would you do in this situation? Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. A forkful of pasta hung mid-air in my hand. What's that supposed to mean? My voice was steady, but my stomach twisted. Across the table, my brother Tyler leaned back in his chair, smirking. She means you'd slow us down. This is an exclusive resort, Em, not exactly your scene. My sister Haley giggled, twirling her wine glass. Besides, you'd need a whole new wardrobe just to blend in. Can you even afford that? My breath caught. That was the thing about my family. They didn't throw punches. They carved you open with little cuts, subtle enough to pass as teasing, but deep enough to bleed. Dad chuckled as if they were all in on some inside joke. It's just a trip, Emily. Don't make it a big deal. The heat in my cheeks was building. I glanced at the itinerary lying in the middle of the table. 5 first-class tickets to the Bahamas. My siblings' names printed neatly in bold. Mine wasn't there. They already booked everything, Haley added, leaning forward like she was sharing a juicy secret. Tyler even got the ocean view suite. Guess you'll have the house to yourself, Tyler said, grinning like he'd just done me a favor. I set my fork down, slow and deliberate. Right, I said, my voice calm, too calm. Enjoy your little getaway, Haley smirked. Oh, we will. They laughed, the kind of laugh that makes you feel like the punchline. But they didn't notice my hand under the table, gripping my phone. My pulse was steady now. Because while they were busy dismissing me, they had no idea I'd been keeping a secret. One that was about to flip their perfect little trip upside down. The next morning, before the sun had even stretched across the horizon, I was already awake. My phone buzzed with a single text. All set. The jet will be at your driveway in an hour. I looked at the stack of glossy airline tickets sitting on my kitchen counter. The ones I'd borrowed after dinner when Tyler left his jacket on the chair and his pocket hung open. 5 tickets. First class. Now in my hand. Outside, the low hum of engines made my heart pound. I stepped to the window, and there it was. Sleek, white, and impossible to ignore. My husband Adam's private jet, parked on the street like it owned the neighborhood. The crew stood at the base of the steps, sunglasses on, waiting for me. I slipped the tickets into my bag, grabbed my sunglasses, and walked to the door. Today the tables were turning, and my family had no idea their perfect trip had just been canceled. The low hum of the jet's engines was already in the air when I stepped out of my front door. The morning sun glinted off its polished white body, parked just beyond the curb like it had every right to be there. 2 uniformed attendants stood at the base of the stairs, their posture crisp, eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. I clutched the ticket sleeve in my bag, feeling the edges press against my palm. Down the street, my family was loading suitcases into an Uber. Haley was posing in the driveway, Tyler filming her like she was about to star in a luxury travel ad. My parents stood off to the side, chatting with the driver. When they saw me walking toward them, all activity slowed. Haley tilted her head, spotting the jet behind me. "What's that doing here?" she asked, her voice too light, too curious. "Our ride," I said calmly. Mom scoffed. "Don't tell me Adam sent that for you." "He did," I replied, adjusting my sunglasses. "We have somewhere to be." Tyler smirked. "You're seriously trying to compete with us? That's cute." Without another word, I reached into my bag and pulled out the ticket sleeve. Their eyes locked on it instantly. Passenger 1, Karen Miller. Passenger 2, David Miller. Passenger 3, Tyler Miller. Passenger 4, Haley Miller. I let the pause hang. And passenger 5, some golf buddy. No Emily. Mom's smile faltered. "Where did you get those?" "You left them where I could see them," I said. "I figured I'd hold on to them for safekeeping." Dad's face tightened. "Emily?" "No," I cut in, my voice steady. "Last night you made it clear this trip wasn't for someone like me, so I made other plans." Haley laughed. "Other plans? What, going to the same place?" "Exactly," I said. "But I'll be staying somewhere. You can't." The jet's engines rumbled a little louder, like it was impatient. My family just stared, half shocked, half scrambling to process that the girl they dismissed at dinner now had the upper hand. "Enjoy your trip," I added, slipping the tickets back into my bag. "I know I will." And without waiting for another word, I turned and walked toward the jet, the sound of their disbelief chasing me all the way to the stairs. The sunlight hit the jet's metallic body like it had been polished just for this moment. I placed my foot on the first step, the faint vibration from the engines thrumming through the metal under my shoe. Every instinct told me to keep walking forward, but something made me pause halfway up. I glanced over my shoulder. My family was still standing there in the driveway. Haley's mouth was hanging open. Tyler was holding his phone halfway up, as if debating whether to record or pretend this wasn't happening. Mom's arms were crossed, but the stiffness in her jaw gave her away. Dad's hand was clenched on the handle of his suitcase. I let them watch me. I wanted them to. The attendant at the top of the stairs smiled politely. "Welcome aboard, Mrs. Cole." Inside, the cabin was bright and immaculate. Cream leather seats, walnut accents, and a faint citrus scent in the air. A crystal carafe of orange juice sat on the table beside a plate of fresh berries. Adam was seated toward the back, phone in hand, dressed in a tailored navy jacket that looked effortless on him. He stood when he saw me, setting the phone aside. "Right on time," he said. I smiled faintly. "I made sure of it." He studied my face for a beat. "You're not shaking." That's good. I'm not here to shake, I said, sliding into the seat across from him. I'm here to prove a point. He nodded once, understanding exactly what I meant without me having to explain. So, he said, glancing toward the window, they saw the jet? Oh, they saw it, I replied, buckling my seatbelt. And the tickets, they know exactly where they stand. The captain's voice came over the intercom. Good morning. We'll be departing in 5 minutes. Estimated flight time to Exuma is just over 3 hours. Please prepare for takeoff. As the engines deepened to a steady roar, I looked out the oval window. The Uber had started to pull away from my parents' driveway, my family's faces still turned toward the jet. Even from here, I could imagine the conversation. Haley's high-pitched disbelief, Tyler's muttering, Mom's clipped accusations, Dad's attempt to play it cool while quietly seething. For years, I'd been the quiet one in the family, the one they didn't invite, didn't consult, didn't take seriously, and yet here I was, heading to the same island. On my own terms. The jet began to roll forward. Adam reached across the aisle and placed his hand over mine, grounding me. You know, he said, this isn't just about the trip. This is about you finally not letting them define you. I know, I said softly, feeling the truth of it settle inside me. And as the nose of the jet lifted from the runway, leaving the street, the houses, and their laughter behind, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Control. 3 hours later, the turquoise waters of Exuma glittered beneath us like shattered glass catching the sun. The jet's shadow skimmed the coastline before we touched down on the small private runway. The moment the cabin door opened, the warm, salty breeze swept in, carrying that heady mix of sea air and sun-warmed sand. Waiting at the bottom of the steps was a line of resort staff in crisp white uniforms, each wearing a name badge and a smile that looked like it belonged in a luxury travel magazine. A black SUV idled behind them, the kind with tinted windows, so deep they looked like obsidian. Welcome to Exuma, Mrs. Cole, the resort manager said, stepping forward with an iPad in hand. We have your entire ocean view wing ready, along with the cabanas you requested. Your private dinner on the beach will be set up for sunset. Adam glanced at me with a faint smirk. You really went all in, didn't you? I shrugged, trying to hide the satisfaction curling in my chest. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. Inside the SUV, the leather seats were cool against my skin, the air conditioning sharp after the Caribbean heat. The road wound past swaying palms and bursts of hibiscus flowers until the gates of the resort came into view, towering iron flanked by security in spotless uniforms. The car slowed, and as we pulled in, I caught sight of something that made my pulse skip. Another black SUV parked just outside the entrance, luggage on the curb, and my family standing there in the heat, talking to a visibly apologetic staff member. I could see Haley gesturing wildly, her oversized sunglasses pushed up on her head, her free hand planted on her hip. Tyler was pacing, phone pressed to his ear. Mom's lips were tight, speaking low to Dad, who looked like he was ready to argue with anyone in a 5-foot radius. The manager beside me followed my gaze and gave a polite, knowing smile. They tried to check in for the ocean view suites this morning, he said. We explained the wing was reserved exclusively for your event. We've offered them garden view rooms instead. I bit back a laugh. And they declined, said they'd wait for the mistake to be fixed. When the SUV rolled past them, Haley's head snapped toward me. Her expression froze somewhere between disbelief and fury. Tyler's jaw dropped. Mom's eyes narrowed into thin, sharp lines. Dad took a single step forward, as if he might block the car, but the driver eased us smoothly through the gates. The resort opened up before us, white stucco buildings draped in bougainvillea, infinity pools spilling into views of the ocean, staff carrying trays of tropical drinks to guests lounging under wide umbrellas. It was quiet, serene, exclusive. When we reached the private wing, a butler stepped forward to open my door. Welcome home for the week, Mrs. Cole. Home for the week. I like the sound of that. As we walked toward the largest suite, I could still feel their eyes on my back from outside those gates. They had come to this island expecting to shut me out. Instead, they were the ones on the other side of the line, waiting, watching, and realizing that no amount of laughter at my expense could change where I stood now. And I wasn't done yet. The first 2 days at the resort felt like living in a different universe. Morning swims in the infinity pool with no one else around. Breakfast on my balcony overlooking the water, the sound of waves breaking against the shore as my background. Music staff who knew my name before I even introduced myself. Adam spent his mornings on conference calls for his company, leaving me the space to soak it all in. And I did, deliberately, unapologetically. But I knew my family was still here. Somewhere beyond the manicured hedges and security gates, they were simmering. I'd heard enough from the resort manager to know they'd managed to book rooms at a less expensive hotel down the road. They'd still been trying to talk their way into their rightful suites. The opportunity for a final word wasn't something I planned. It came to me. On the third evening, the resort hosted a beachfront welcome dinner for my Literacy Foundation's donors and volunteers. Long white tables draped in linen stood under strings of glowing lights. The smell of grilled seafood and fresh herbs mingled with the warm ocean breeze. As I stepped onto the sand in a flowing deep blue dress, I spotted them immediately, just beyond the rope that marked the private section of the beach. Mom in a stiff cream outfit that didn't suit the island heat. Dad with his arms crossed, scanning the setup. Haley in a sundress that was clearly meant for Instagram, phone in hand. Tyler standing just behind them, smirking like he was above the whole thing. They weren't here to crash the dinner. They were here to make a point. But so was I. I walked straight toward the rope, every eye at my table following me. "Evening," I said, stopping just in front of them. Mom's mouth tightened. "So, this is your little event?" I tilted my head. "Not so little, actually. We've raised enough to open 2 new reading centers in under 24 hours. Dad gave a sarcastic huff. "That's nice. So, are you done playing games now? You've made your point." "No," I said, smiling faintly. "Not yet." Haley crossed her arms. "You seriously think humiliating us like this makes you the bigger person?" "I'm not humiliating you," I replied. "I'm just showing you what I've been doing while you were busy telling me I don't fit in." I gestured toward the long tables, the people laughing and chatting, the resort staff moving effortlessly between them. "You wanted me to stay home because you thought this trip was too good for me. But the truth is, this trip was never about you at all." Mom's voice dropped to that low, dangerous register she used when she was angry, but wanted to look composed. "We're still family, Emily." "Family?" I let the word hang for a beat. Family doesn't measure your worth by the clothes you wear or the invitations you get. Family doesn't laugh at you for not being good enough. And family definitely doesn't tell you to stay behind like a stray dog while they go make memories without you. Dad's jaw tightened. "You're overreacting." "No," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "I'm remembering." The sound of clinking glasses drifted, over from the tables, followed by a burst of applause from my guests. The manager approached, holding a small microphone. "Mrs. Cole, we're ready for your speech." I took the mic, but before I turned to my audience, I looked back at them one last time. "You could have been here tonight," I said, "not just as guests, but as people who supported me. But you made your choice, and I made mine." I didn't wait for a reply. I walked to the center of the tables, the sand warm under my heels, and faced my guests. Behind me, I could still feel my family watching. "Good evening," I began, my voice carrying just enough to reach them too. "When I started this foundation, a lot of people didn't believe in me. They thought I didn't belong in places like this. But what they didn't understand is that belonging isn't something people give you. It's something you claim for yourself." The guests clapped, some even standing. My eyes swept over the tables, past the twinkling lights, and toward the ocean. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was proving anything to them. I wasn't playing on their terms. I was just living mine, on my own ground, in my own voice. The sun dipped lower, casting the sky in shades of gold and rose. The waves kept rolling in, steady and endless. And somewhere beyond the rope, my family stood silent, not laughing, not dismissing, just silent, exactly the way I wanted it.